The topic is Brown versus Board of Education and the Civil Rights Movement, and we're talking to Dr. Revis Mitchell. Dr. Mitchell, as we promised before we had ended our second segment, that we'd give you an opportunity to talk about that critical period between 1954 and the 1960s, with the beginning of the so-called Civil Rights Movement, this period of massive resistance and etc. Talk about some of the historical developments in that particular period.
I certainly want to set the stage, but in a conversation with my son Roman, who's 12 years old, who's a student, Roman reminded me that we needed to point out about who Brown was. We referred to Brown. Linda Brown. And he reminded me that Linda Brown had to walk about 2 miles to school every day, and her father became upset because in Topeka, Kansas, where they lived, they walked past a school that white students could attend. And it's very poignant. Linda Brown is still out on the circuit. She's still lecturing. But she pointed out that she asked her father one day, why do we have to go past these schools? Why come I can't attend? And Mr. Brown, in statements and in written comments, he pointed out how bad he felt to tell his daughter why she couldn't attend. That he didn't believe she was inferior in any way, but the system. So that led Brown, who was a product of this post-period, post-war, to take resistance, We'd see that in America. You know, the irony is that many of those young people who 54 through 60 who are educated become the college students who, when the Civil Rights Movement comes about. When you look at Birmingham later, and you look at Arkansas, you look at Little Rock, these people have been exposed to the media. They've read of Brown. I think what's sometimes missed when looking at African-American culture is there have been discussions in churches and in clubs and in schools about what Brown meant. And suddenly it empowered the people. It empowered the people to follow nonviolent, passive resistance, but to take a proactive stance. You know, what the Civil Rights Movement really did with the use of the media, it made the world and it made America look at how it was treating its African-American counterparts. How dogs would be sicked upon people, how people would be forced to walk and couldn't ride buses. And all these people were asking for was a God-given right to the American dream.
Dr. Mitchell, let me interrupt you because in 1960, when you talked about that incident of the dogs and et cetera, being a student at AM&N College in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, a freshman student, never having taken a pen in hand before to write any kind of statement before in my life. I wrote a little piece of information to the Arkansas Democrat. And the only thing it said was fine example that we're showing to the rest of the world and sign my name. And they published that. And it was from that inspiration alone that I became convinced that I had to tell the story of the African American.
You see, I think that, and that has been replicated in so many instances. Here in Nashville, Tennessee, you know, so much civil rights activities would take place here with students working to desegregate the lunch counters. But Nashville's population, Nashvillians, responded to a quiet demand, not a violent demand, but a quiet demand. But just what you said, why are you treating me this way? How come I can come in a store and purchase commodities, purchase a suit, but I can't sit down and have a cola? You know, what have I done? What is my endemic inferiority? Or really said to America, why are you afraid to enter into things with me equally? From the Civil Rights Movement, we have fast progression to Brown, even the present day. And so many institutions which African Americans hold dear, it appears, are under attack. We never demanded the creation of historically black colleges. Historically black colleges were set up in the period after the Civil War for African Americans. But from those colleges, we learned the lessons of the Civil Rights Movement. We learned the lessons of Brown. And many times now it seems that there's a forceful effort in America to dismantle those colleges, those institutions, everywhere from Jackson State in Mississippi to what some see as an attack on Tennessee State here in Nashville, Tennessee. You know, why suddenly is it wrong to have a place for people who have been denied to understand that, to understand the history, and to tell their story to the world? I think the other point about segregation people need to realize is African Americans have never segregated. There's never been a time when persons of all races and creeds, there's never been a time when white Americans were not welcome at Fisk or Tennessee State or any black institution. There's never been a time when whites in America may have entered a black business establishment and they were forced to take a seat in the rear. There's never been a time with a black taxi service that it wouldn't support and move white Americans. When is the rest of America going to take the lesson of African Americans from Brown through support of national causes and bring it to fruition? And as the poet once said, when is America going to find to be America for me?
Very good. And you know, Dr. Mitchell, one of the things is we've got about 5 minutes here, and let's see if we can introduce this as an area of discussion. Yeah. One of the things that people often talk about is that the Brown decision also demanded additional resources from the government, which is to say the government was told that it could no longer divide its resources the way it was. Speak to some of the
well, you know, the whole concept of separate but equal, things were never equal. So if things weren't equal to begin with, to raise me to a level, you've got to put more into my communities. You've got to put more into me. Post-Brown, though, what we were saying was poorly educated African Americans cost the American system. Poorly educated persons are more likely to end up on welfare, are more likely to end up without employment. So we were arguing that with equal access to education and equal access to opportunity, because that's what Brown was really looking at, equal access to opportunity. And in America, I think I'm repeating myself, but in America, a first-class education was the first opportunity. 1649 in New England, first public school act. People believing that to be a well-trained and informed citizen, you had to be educated. So this had been denied. What we really wanted was equality with education. And that equality of education led to an equality in American life, an equality with the American dream. Post-Brown, we continually battled back and forth regarding voting rights and accessibility, or support for inner-city communities, or support for higher education. But Dr. Haney, it all stems back to Brown. That decision saying that it's un-American to have things separate but equal, I think challenged the status quo in America.
Dr. Mitchell, during the last 3 minutes that we have, let me have you to speak specifically to young people today who might not be focused or involved and even understand. What would you tell them in terms of their responsibility, or do they have a responsibility to continue the expansion of what Brown represented?
Yes, they do. It's a shame in America to have forced laws to support people who don't go to school. Truancy is not a luxury that especially the minority community can afford. The next great message from Brown, and the great American message, is we all must vote. America must become a nation where people are fully participating. It's not enough to have 33% of the population vote in national elections. It's not enough to have only 24% of the African American population vote. The promise of Brown, the struggles, and as we move in this century to an international arena and international discussions of economics and others, Americans, all Americans, must vote. They must be well educated. They must be able to support themselves. And literacy, you know, we don't have the luxury of illiteracy anymore in the world. So that's the great lesson of Brown. African Americans took a very little and made quite a bit out of it. Now the legacy is to take that participation and reach the fullest potential. You know, go to high school, go to college, graduate, look at a profession, become involved in community. That's what we should be about.
And you would encourage them, as some of the final statements dealing with Brown and civil rights, to participate in the upcoming presidential election, congressional elections, and state elections, and etc.
And in America, in this point in time, a high school education is not enough. A high school education equivals out to about our grandparents. Every person in the sound of my voice needs to consider a college education, the dream of America. There are funds out there, there are possibilities out there. And they must also keep themselves informed by continuing to support and view programs like Comments, because the salient discussions that come about from this stage are ones that can be carried over into the family room, the classroom, the church room. And that's what made Brown work, when people talked about what had happened, when they entered into it, when they were fully participating Americans and fully participating citizens.
And Dr. Mitchell, let me thank you over the last 30 seconds we have for that excellent information. I think that this is, as we indicated earlier, this is the fourth of a 5-series part of shows that we're dealing with Brown versus the Board of Education. Of course, this is Brown, Segregation, and Civil Rights. And we've got one final show to deal with, and that is Brown and Historical Black Colleges.
Well, thank
and
you
we
for
certainly
the invitation.
appreciate you.
Thank
And,
you for the
of course, let
invitation.
me encourage our audience to tune in again next week for another informative edition of Comments. Thank you, and good morning. Important that we talk about it.